So, welcome to our second Positive Psychology and Masculinities interview. Very excited to be joined today by Joel Wong. Dr. Wong is a professor of counseling psychology at Indiana University, and Joel's research addresses gratitude interventions and practices, the psychology of men and masculinities, and Asian American mental health. He's a fellow of APA through Division 17, 45, and 51, and is also a fellow of the Asian American Psychological Association. Joel serves as editor for Psychology of Men and Masculinities. And I'd like to note he's also past president of the APA Division 17 section on positive psychology. So thank you so much for being here, Joel.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for organizing this, Brian.
So if this is your first visit to one of our interviews, just to tell you a little bit about the format, we kind of start broad and general with a positive psychology topic, and then we begin to narrow that near the middle to talk some about the implications of that construct for masculinities. So we'll also make sure to leave about 15 to 20 minutes near the end of the hour for questions, and we'll go ahead and jump right in. So, Joel, you're joining us today to talk with us about gratitude. And I'd like to start by just hearing more from you about how you conceptualize gratitude and how it fits broadly into positive psychology.
Yeah, sure. Gratitude is actually one of the most well-researched topics and constructs in positive psychology. Arguably, the most number of interventions have been conducted, positive psych interventions have been conducted, has been gratitude interventions. How to conceptualize and define it has been surprisingly controversial. Folks don't even agree on what gratitude means. So I'm giving you my spin on it. I thought a bit about it for a while. The way I think about gratitude is it has three levels. And the most broad and basic level, I call it generalized gratitude. It is the appreciation of good things in your life. And this is the important part, attributing the source of the goodness to external sources. So external means outside of yourself, but it can be people, or it can be God if you believe in a divine being, or it can be just circumstances or good luck. All right, so it's external to you, but doesn't have to be people. So that's just generalized gratitude. But you can also think of gratitude at a second level as targeted gratitude, and that's being grateful to a person. So not just like I'm grateful for the sunshine or I'm grateful for things, but you're grateful to a person for something that they have done for you, and we call that targeted gratitude. Some scholars believe that targeted gratitude is the only correct definition of gratitude, whereas generalized gratitude doesn't count. And I take a more inclusive approach. And then at a third level, I call it actionable gratitude, which is you don't just feel grateful to a person, but you do something, you express gratitude to another person, you do something for them, to the benefactor who has done something for you. And I want to mention that traditionally, if we go back to history, that's been the way gratitude has been defined by scholars in the past. So think of it as three levels: generalized, targeted, and then actionable gratitude.
So, as you think about the different components that you're unpacking there, do you find that they have equal importance?
Yeah, so in an article I wrote, I talked about the differences among the three, and they do differ in terms of moral significance as well as social significance, right? So, generalized gratitude, you're grateful for the sunshine, you're grateful for things that happen, grateful for the car that I drive. Those don't necessarily involve people, right? But once you get to targeted and actionable gratitude, it becomes inherently interpersonal and social. And so, one of the benefits of targeted gratitude, actionable gratitude, is that it offers not just the possibility of thinking and feeling more positively, but it offers the possibility of social connection. So, I think there are definitely some benefits there that you don't get in generalized gratitude. And then I've also argued that, and not just me, but other scholars too, that um, uh, targeted gratitude and actionable gratitude has increased levels of moral significance. What I mean by that is nobody would ever accuse you of being ungrateful if you're not grateful for the sunshine, right? But if someone did something for you and went out of the way to help you, and then the opportunity arose and you didn't bother to do anything for them, or you don't feel an ounce of gratitude towards them, sometimes we'll label this person ungrateful. So there's a greater level of moral significance in these higher forms of gratitude, where we begin to pronounce a sense of moral judgment about rightness and wrongness.
Oh, that's a really interesting point.
Yeah,
So as you think about the, I guess there are a lot of ways we could go with this because this construct is so large.
yeah,
What do you see as some of the most interesting or most important research findings on the practice of gratitude, specifically
yeah,
maybe
sure.
the targeted and actionable forms?
Yeah, of course. So first of all, correlational research, a bunch of meta-analyses showing that gratitude, and when I say gratitude here, I'm probably most studies have looked at generalized gratitude, is correlated with a whole bunch of really good things, positive mental health and less depression, good relationships, just a whole bunch of good stuff, right? So that's correlational work. Um, when it comes to experimental work, focusing more on like interventions, right? Very common activity would be gratitude journaling. You find the effects are a little bit smaller and more ambiguous and more mixed findings. You're showing some benefits, but not as clear cut as the correlational work, right? What I've noticed, and of course, there's been a critique of like, well, what can you do to improve gratitude interventions? And my suspicion is that most of the interventions that's been done has been more targeted towards sort of generalized gratitude, most commonly the gratitude journaling, which I want to emphasize is a great activity and I encourage everyone to do it. But it doesn't include sort of the more social component. So some scholars have called for interventions to incorporate more of that social component. Kind of we call it higher dosage interventions, face to face. You do things, you express gratitude. And again, I'm seeing some glimmers that these types of studies, intervention studies, where there's more interaction, face to face work, you express gratitude to the person, produces perhaps potentially stronger effects.
Wonderful. So you've talked a bit about how these targeted actionable forms of gratitude really help us to lean into connection.
Yeah.
Do you have other thoughts about how gratitude is generally important to our mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I'll mention a few things and also tell you a story. So, um, you can think of gratitude as a way to slow down the process of habituating to good things in our lives, right? Um, you understand the concept of habituation, which can be habituation to both bad things and good things. But we learn a lot about habituation to bad things, right? You exposure therapy, you expose yourself to something you fear over time, you become less fearful. Well, the same thing happens with good things in our lives, right? The first time you receive your very first iPhone, you unwrap the plastic, there's a shiver that goes down your spine. By the way, I actually don't use an iPhone. I'm more of an Android user. But, you feel excited and you love it and you feel that thrill. What happens 3 months later? Sometimes you don't even remember you had a phone, or you left it in the bathroom. You lose that appreciation for it, right? So that's habituation in action. Gratitude, is one of the ways you slow down that process so that you begin to pay more attention to little things that you have in your life that perhaps you don't you're taking for granted. So one of the things I like to tell others is that gratitude helps you to desire what you already have and not simply desire what you don't have. So much of our life is spent hungering after things we don't have and we don't desire what we actually already have. So that's one positive benefit from mental health. It generates positive thoughts and positive emotions by slowing down the process of habituation. Um, Other benefits is that it also can help address the negative experiences in our lives by reframing them. Many of us are familiar with the literature on like post-traumatic growth, stuff like that. So gratitude, there's also some research showing that if you write about negative experiences in your life and you try to write about it from a grateful lens, right? You write about something really painful that happened in the past, and then he's like, oh, what can I be grateful for? It actually helps to close the open memories that you have about these negative experiences. I mean, you have less intrusive thoughts when you're able to do that. And I think what happens is that you're able to reframe the meaning of these negative experiences, see it from a different angle. So there again, you see gratitude enhancing the positive and also reducing the power of the negative in your life. Right? Um, there's also obviously the interpersonal connection. When, for example, if you write a gratitude letter and you actually don't keep the letter to yourself, you actually read it or send it to someone else, there's the opportunity for a social connection between you and the other person. Because the other person, I would say more than 95% of the time, if you write a gratitude letter to another person, that person reacts positively with deep gratitude to you. You're expressing gratitude to them, and now they're expressing gratitude to you, and now you have this connection. So the story I wanted to share is not from my own life, although I have lots of examples from my own life too. But this was a story shared by a colleague who was a psychologist at a counseling center, and he said, I had a very difficult relationship with my dad, who was this really gruff and rough person who was very harsh to me, no, emotional expression. You all know what I'm talking about, right? Um, and he said one day he decided to write this letter to his dad, a gratitude letter, and he wrote this letter and read it to his dad, and his dad broke down and cried and gave him a hug. And this colleague of mine said, he'd never seen that before in his entire life. And he said, it's not like it's super dramatic. It's not like he changed, not like his dad changed and become a better person. But two things changed. Number one, he and his dad became closer. They became closer after the writing of this letter, even though his dad didn't change. And number two, he changed in his perception of his dad by writing the letter. So that's powerful, right? So the process of writing a letter, you're focusing on the positive on another person, and he began to see his dad in a positive light. So I think that's a really powerful story of gratitude. Um, uh, I've got more I want to say, but I think I've talked too much. So Brian, you've unmuted yourself.
No,
Go
I,
ahead.
I think that's a wonderful example of how relationships can really flourish through
Yeah,
expression of gratitude and how the perceptions of the relationship can also change. I love that example. I think
yeah,
it's such a powerful one, and it can break down some of the barriers we're going to talk about a little bit later.
yeah,
Um, you also hinted at this relationship between gratitude and post-traumatic growth, and I think that brings me to a broader question. One of the challenges I think we experience in the field of positive psychology is helping folks to understand that we can find balance and that we can hold lots of complex emotions at the same time.
yeah,
So, what is the role of positive emotions or traits such as gratitude in times of suffering?
yeah. This week has been rough for many of us, right? Uh, yeah, right. Bunch of y'all nodding your head. Yeah, it's rough, right? And one thing I would never ever say, and I hope none of you take away that message from today, that we never want to tell someone who's experiencing suffering or distress, just be grateful. Don't worry, just be grateful. Or like, just look at the positive side of things. Um, that's just insensitive and Pollyannish. That's what lay people might say, but we as psychologists, I think we're trained with the skills, right, not to say something like that. With that said, I think there's room to hold the negative and the positive intention. And And the way to do that with sensitivity is this. First, two things I would say. First, um, it's easier to look back at something in the past that was painful with a grateful lens than to do it in a current situation, right? So many of, I mean, if you're, for those of you who are clinicians, I would say, I recommend that it's easier for you to work with your clients. Say, let's look back at something that happened in the past that happened in the past. It still hurts a little bit, but there's some distance there. And let's try to look at it from a grateful lens. I think that's always going to be easy as opposed to something that's very, very raw and immediately you're jumping into what are you grateful for, right? So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that there's a role for gratitude even in the midst of current stressful situations. The way I think we can use the harness the power of gratitude in very painful situations is for us to express gratitude to a person, right? Who is uh, to express gratitude for each other, right? So we're not expressing gratitude for the painful situation. We're not saying, I mean, yay, this politician won elections. Well, it sucks, but no, I'm going to find things to be. Well, you don't have to do that. But we can express gratitude to each other. We can say, in the midst of this pain, um, you know, I'm just reminded that I have you as a friend. I have you as someone who I can talk to. I have you as someone who can understand. Or I can say, I want to hold on to what's good in you. And that's one of the way you can draw on each other to experience support. So gratitude becomes an expression of social support. So I want to say one thing that is often left out of the conversations of gratitude, especially in pop psychology. Saying, everyone's gratitude is all the rage these days. Everyone's talking about, oh, Thanksgiving is coming up. How can you be grateful? So you boost your mental health. I mean, that's not a bad thing at all. I think gratitude is an amazing way to boost your mental health. But if you look at the history and philosophy, last 2,000 years, that's not primarily how people think about gratitude. If you go back to Aristotle and Seneca and Confucius, that's not how they think about gratitude. They think of gratitude not so much as something that benefits yourself, but gratitude as something you do for someone else. All right. So I feel like that perspective has been kind of left out in our kind of an individualistic society.
Mhm.
So, but if we think of like, who can I bless today by telling them that I noticed you, I saw you, that you did something for me, and I didn't take you for granted. I want you to know that. And by doing that, you're boosting their mental health, their well-being. And then secondarily, you get a boost too. But that's not the point. The point is about them. It's about other people, but telling others that they matter. It requires a shift in our mindset of taking gratitude as a way to boost someone else's mental health and not simply focus on your own.
I really love how much you're emphasizing the interpersonal dynamics of gratitude, and that really reflects the viral nature of some of these constructs. The idea that we give gratitude away, and we give positive emotion away as a side effect to that.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that really jumped out at me about what you just shared is this idea that we can sit in the suffering and in our distress, and we can honor that suffering while also being grateful for the things that are going well or for the people that are in our lives. And I really think that's so important in being able to have a clear perspective of like seeing all of it and not just having the hyper focused on the problem, right? We are able to still see the good things around us and lean into those connections and supports in times where we might need them the most.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with you that gratitude is so foundational to our kind of interpersonal connections with others. Yeah.
So, what then is the role of culture in the expression and in the experience of gratitude?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So two things. Here in U.S. society, contemporary U.S. society, we often think of gratitude in two ways, right? One as an emotion, which it is. I'm not saying it's not. It's something you feel, it makes you feel good. Number two, if we think of expressions of gratitude, we think of the most common expression we think of as verbal expressions of gratitude. How do you express gratitude? You tell someone that you're grateful to them. And I think those are very valid expressions. But it's just important to recognize that across culture, not everybody thinks of gratitude that way. Um, in for example, East Asian cultures, gratitude is not often thought of as an emotion. Well, it's not something you focus on as an emotion, but more as something you do for someone else, as a form of reciprocity, as a form of behavior. So it's not simply just telling someone like, oh, like words are cheap, but you want to be able to, someone has done something for you, you want to give them a gift, you want to perform acts of service for others, right? And it's just surprising that we actually don't have scales to measure that. So I have a scale development study that looks at two dimensions of gratitude expressions, kind of the verbal dimension, and then the behavioral dimension of gratitude, where it's more like you do something for someone, you have acts of service. Just a bit of fun fact in this study that's still unpublished, it's still under review, second round of review. That study was we looked at a bunch of college students from diverse backgrounds. Uh, and what was surprising even for me was this is in the U.S. This is not even in a different country. It's the people who practice more of that behavioral expressions of gratitude actually have better mental health. That was a better predictor than the verbal expressions. And you can speculate on why. So I want to say maybe we have something we can learn from people of other culture. They've understood gratitude and what it means, and maybe there's something even here in the U.S. we can learn. But you can speculate on the meaning of this. But one possible interpretation is that words are cheap. I mean, words. Okay, I wouldn't say words are cheap. Words are powerful too. But when you actually go to the effort of thinking of how do I not just tell someone I'm grateful, but I'm giving them a gift, I'm doing something for them, that level of intentionality it brings it up a step to a more powerful connection. Yeah.
I love that. And so I went to Amazon and just searched for gratitude under books and found over 60,000 results. Now, a lot of those are probably gratitude journals,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of desire to think about how to intentionally to integrate gratitude into our lives. I
Yeah.
guess I'm wondering, are there two or three specific gratitude interventions that you would recommend to folks?
Yeah, I do. First of all, I'm just going to put this into the chat. I have a website for lay people, just gratitude resources, and so you're welcome to use them and share it with others. You don't need my permission to share them with your friends, your clients. I just want to say that I don't make any money out of this. I have no ads. It's just stuff that I have. So it includes both like a whole bunch of gratitude practices that you can have practice in your life, as well as 130 gratitude prompts that you can use to kind of practice gratitude journaling. But a couple of things I would say. First of all, this is the power of research. Research is humbling to you, humbling for you. So in a recent study that our colleagues and I did, we did this was a collaboration with my university with the sort of health promotion department of our university. We had a gratitude campaign, and in a gratitude campaign, we didn't tell participants that you must engage in this particular activity. Rather, we gave them 6 gratitude activities, and we say we want you to try all of them. Try every one of them every week, and then we encourage you to try something each week. And if you like it, you do it more often. And then we try to see, this is correlational research because we don't have randomization, but we try to control for every conceivable thing we could think of and see which participation in which activity best predicted the most gratitude at the end of that 6 weeks. And the results was humbling, very humbling. I like the journaling stuff. I have these deep journaling activities that people can do and all that. But no, that's not what we found. We found that the two activities where gratitude activities that people engaged in repeatedly that best predicted a boost in gratitude were the simplest activities, simple activities. So what were they? There was number one, really, really simple. Take a gratitude walk. right? It was just a great time of the year right now in the fall season. You go out and you're not just walking, but you're looking at your environments, looking at the trees, and you're just appreciating, expressing gratitude for nature and the surrounding environments. Number two, and number two is something that has been replicated in other experimental research. Write a brief gratitude note to someone and do that regularly. So when I mean a brief gratitude note, I don't mean writing like long letters, even though we had one condition where we asked people to write letters, and that wasn't the best. In
Mm.
fact, ironically, writing brief notes was better. Why? My suspicion is it just requires less work. So brief gratitude note, something to try this week. Today, 2 sentences, write 2 sentences, text message. Tell someone, hey, just want you to know, you're just one of the most important people in my life. I appreciate you. You did this for me. Thank you. 2 sentences.
I love that.
Yeah, that's easy. I've started a class and I said I want all of you to take out your phones, write a brief gratitude note, text message right now to someone. So that's an easy activity. You do that regularly. It's great.
So you've hit on so many important points here. Um, for folks in the room that are educators, I do want to share like I've been using the gratitude prompts with my own students as like weekly icebreakers in my class for the last year. And I found that they have a major impact on participation. Folks tend to connect early and they're excited and they're talking with each other and they're talking to folks they don't normally talk with. And then the conversation for the rest of class is better because folks are feeling good and they're warmed up. So I really encourage y'all to think about integrating these things in your classes. I've found that they've just been wonderful. And Joel, I really appreciate how accessible you've made all of this for everyone. The other thing that jumped out at me was, in thinking about these interventions, providing a menu of things really speaks to this idea that there's not a one size fits all best intervention. One of the things I've been really curious about is the impact of like a dosage. So how do you help folks dial in what amount of practice is helpful to them so that it doesn't start to feel prescriptive or like homework, like not doing gratitude journaling 7 days a week, maybe 3 days a week, the research says is more effective. How do you tune that with folks?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've thought about this in the context of therapy. I know a bunch of you are here are therapists. Um, Instead of simply asking clients to do a daily gratitude journal, which you could, I mean, I don't want to say it's bad at all. In fact, I do it personally. I think it's great. I recommend it to everyone. I recognize not everybody has that discipline. I might recommend you do it in session. You say, I just want to, because you don't have, there's no homework. You just do it in session, the beginning of a session or the end. And say, I want to begin or end every session, just a couple of minutes for you to reflect on what you're grateful for. And you can be reflecting on something that you're grateful for in the session, like something you learned in the session, or it could be something that happened this week. And if you're stuck, here are 130 gratitude prompts that you could use. And so that way, there's no homework to do. Um, Again, I want to share one resource. I'm going to put it in the chat. Um, a bunch of colleagues and I recently produced, well, we didn't produce it. We participated in an APA video series on like showcasing therapeutic techniques. This one is about like a whole bunch of techniques to help clients experience flourishing. And I'm not the only therapist in that video, a whole bunch of us. But I focus exclusively on gratitude techniques. So in the video, I'm going to demonstrate 4 or 5 different ways that you can actually infuse gratitude in your work with clients. One of which is simply ask clients, and we're going to do a bit of practice and reflection on what you're grateful for. Again, I want to emphasize, I don't get any royalties from this video, so but I wanted to offer you something to think about. So, but yeah, the key is something in terms of dosage is the tricky thing about dosage is that if the dosage is too small, you kind of don't get much benefits. But if the dosage is too large, then people find it hard to get it done, right? To kind of be able to keep into the habit of it. So I have a little tip of how to get people kind of, if you like gratitude journaling and you want to get people to do it. I found one thing that's been really helpful, and I want to test this in a future research study. I find that gratitude journaling works a lot better if you do it together in a group. because there's a little bit of social pressure, healthy pressure, healthy, and it's also inspiration. You learn from others. So how do you do that? You won't believe after like experimenting with a variety of different tools, I found the perfect tool, and this is something that was recommended by a New York Times reader. It's so simple, you'd be surprised. Google Sheets.
Oh,
So use, Google Sheets. It's free. You share it with a bunch of people. I don't recommend more than like maybe 10 people, but a group of friends, a group of people together, and you on one column you have everyone's name, and then you add dates to every column, and you just write what you're grateful for. Now the thing about this is that if you don't add anything, after a while, everyone will notice your column is blank. That's a bit of social pressure. And
right.
so, a gratitude class that I'm teaching right now, I do it, so I've all the students with me, and we do it together, and so my name is there, everyone's name is there, and we do it. And I say, this is participation. If you do that, I give you 5 points, but students like it because there's a bit of accountability, and sometimes I get students to share with each other what they wrote. And so the ability to see each other, what each other wrote, and learn from each other and inspire each other is very helpful. And again, there's that social connection.
Yeah, I think that's another great social component, the accountability buddy. So let's be partners in this gratitude process. And this DVD looks like a fantastic resource. So thank you for letting us know about that. I want to kind of transition and blend in some of your other expertise around masculinities. So, what are your thoughts about the ways that traditional masculinity might influence the expression or experience of gratitude?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I was trying to do a bit of a search into research in this area, and I found very little, almost nothing. So, in my other hats that I'm wearing as editor of the Psychology of Men and Masculinities, this is a call to all of you out there. I'd love to see some research on uh, the relationship between different masculinity constructs and experience and expression of gratitude. So, but I don't have an empirical answer. I can speculate.
Sure.
And if I were to speculate, I would say that conformity to masculine norms, um, restricted masculinity ideologies, the more you have those, the less likely you are to be grateful, and the less likely you are to express gratitude to others too. And the reason is simple, um, and this is something I struggle with. Because gratitude, if you take my definition of gratitude, it does require that at least you need to acknowledge that the source of your uh, goodness and benefits in your life comes from an external source.
Mm,
That's basically requires a bit of humility and a bit
right.
of vulnerability. You're basically saying, I didn't do it all myself, right? It's uh, those of the scholars who also align with my definition agree you cannot be grateful to yourself. That in itself is an oxymoron, which is kind of ironic because in 2018, I think there was during the Thanksgiving season, then President Donald Trump sent out a tweet to say, he basically expressed gratitude to himself for lowering oil prices. Uh, that's just, in my view, a contradiction. That experience, that emotion is pride. It's not gratitude. And I wouldn't say pride is bad. Pride is good. It's a positive emotion. Gratitude requires you to say, I'm dependent on someone else. So it just goes against the norm, the masculine norm of self-reliance. So that's what I suspect might be going on. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate your willingness to step out of the data because there's just so little we know about positive psychology and masculinities. And theoretically, I think that makes a lot of sense. The idea of humbling yourself and being able to step out of that role of being the one that's doing for everyone else. Um, and so my guess is that my follow-up question you also won't have found data for, but do you notice anything about gender differences in the benefits of gratitude practice?
Yes, so we do actually have data on gender differences.
Oh,
So
interesting.
not on masculinity variables, but gender differences, like comparing women and men.
Mhm.
So two things across the board. This is like a very robust finding. In almost any study you find, you find this is not a shock, but women experience more gratitude and express more gratitude than men, right? Just this is a pretty robust finding. Um, Also, one of the things that really, really saddens me is I've organized a whole bunch of gratitude interventions, and I find that the participation, people who usually attend and participate are usually women. So this gratitude campaign that my university did, and it helped them to organize it, it was framed as a health promotion, right? It's not even mental health. We frame it as health promotion. Let's have the whole university get involved in gratitude. And of course, it's voluntary. It's like, it's like up to you if you want to participate in it. We gave them a $10 gift card, but I don't think anyone did it for $10. I mean, it's like 6 weeks, right? But you know what was the percentage of women and versus men who participated in this when I got the data? My heart sank. 90% women.
Wow.
Yeah, it saddens me that men are just not only are men reporting lower levels of gratitude but they're also not participating in gratitude activities and interventions and programs, right? All right, one more thing.
Yeah.
The question is, how about does gratitude produce better benefits for women versus men?
Yeah.
The research in this area is mixed. I've seen one study that looked at how women actually experience more benefits. So this is more correlational, right? And I saw another study. This was adolescent boys showing the opposite, showing that boys were expressing gratitude less, experiencing gratitude less than women. But when they do, the gratitude was correlated with larger levels of social connection with others, suggesting that the boys were getting
Wow.
more benefits out of it. So again, I don't know the research is mixed, so I don't know the answer to that. My hypothesis, I see no reason why boys and men can't benefit from gratitude. I just are not doing it, and I think if they did it, they would experience benefits. This is my hypothesis. If I
Yeah.
go out of the data.
I think it's a strong one. And so, part of the broader conversation in this interview series is about the fact that these are human traits and human emotions that we're talking
Yes.
about,
Yes.
and how they intersect with masculinities, to impact the perceived value and the implementation, and like just trying to put these things back on the table for men and boys. Um, so do you have thoughts about how these interventions might be tailored, or how they might be approached in a way that's, I guess, perceived as more beneficial, like for men that are maybe struggling with challenges related to expressing emotion? Like, how do I like put this out here as a tool? Like,
Yeah.
okay, this could actually be beneficial to me.
Yeah. So I'll give you the short answer and I'll give you the long answer. Short answer, I don't know. I don't know. And if you do know, email me at joelwong@iu.edu. I really would love your suggestions and recommendations. Because like I said, clearly I'm seeing boys and men participating in gratitude activities and programs at a much lower rate, even though I think they could benefit from it. If I were to speculate, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I don't know if any of these work. And I think this would be a great empirical question to test different ways to kind of market gratitude to men. Number one, I've tried using this before. I said, think of gratitude as vitamins, right? Something to boost your immunity. I don't know if that would appeal to men. So think of it as, I call this vitamin G, um, sort of something to strengthen you, right? Is this going to work? I have no idea. So that's one thing. The second is, if the notion of gratitude expression to someone else is makes creates too much vulnerability for men. Like, oh, you're gonna put me in this program where I have to go tell someone that I'm grateful to them. we can do a bit of scaffolding, right? Where says you can write something about what you're grateful for, and then you can decide ultimately whether you want to be able to share this with someone else. We think that benefits, but we can take it step by step. So that's a way of making it a bit less scary. There is um, many of you as therapists are familiar with this empty chair technique, right? Two chair, empty chair technique. There's a gratitude version of that that I've demonstrated in the video that APA video that I've talked about. But where you can express gratitude to someone without in a safer environment. If this is too scary, it's like to share it in a person. But you can start by doing it to an empty chair. Like if you're a therapist, to say like someone that you've been grateful to. Okay, maybe it's you don't have to say it to this person yet, but this is a chance for you to express your gratitude. Imagine this person is here. What would you want to say to them? It's kind of a safer environment. Maybe for some men, the doing is easier than saying, right? Doing things.
Right.
So maybe kind of framing gratitude as like being able to do things for others, could be a meaningful activity. But I would just say all of those are my rough hypotheses, and I certainly welcome suggestions from the rest of y'all.
Yeah, I think that last point about gratitude is action in particular could be pretty helpful for a lot of guys. So before we open this up to the room, I guess I'm just curious, are there other things you want to share with us about gratitude or pieces we haven't hit on that you think are really important?
No, we're good. And probably there might be things that will come up later as the questions can roll in, but yeah.
All right, well, let's open this up to the room. What questions do you have for Joel? Ollie, go ahead.
How does gratitude differ from hope, and how are they linked together?
All right, good question. Um, so one of the ways I distinguish gratitude from hope, and they're both positive emotions, right, is that hope and optimism are more future oriented, right? I mean, you're hoping for something in the future, something that you haven't received yet, but you're kind of looking ahead. Gratitude, on the other hand, is more present and past focused. So that's the kind of really the differences in the time orientation. It just sounds a bit weird to be grateful for something in the future. It's like I'm grateful that I'm going to be X, Y, and Z. That just sounds a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying you can be grateful, but it's not how we typically think of gratitude. Um, we're grateful for things that we have right now, and then we look back into our past. In fact, I want to argue that looking back into the past is one of the most distinctive aspects, features of gratitude. The ability to go back and go back 10 years, 20 years, and zoom in on an incident, and really use your memory to hone in on something powerful that happened in your past and to celebrate it is one of the most powerful aspects of gratitude. Lots and lots of stories of people who have done that, going back and remembering this incident and how this person really, really helped me. So that's kind of what I would say. Like Ron, it looks like you got a question.
Yes, thank you, Brian, and thank you, Joel, for an excellent Q&A and interview. My question, I was just reflecting on something in the chat from John Davies about his observations that boys and men are starved for intimacy, uh, but struggle to seek it and accept it. One of the things I'm curious about, Joel, is men who are emotionally inexpressive uh, to and you did talk a little bit about the intersection with masculinities, but men who are emotionally inexpressive, can they to what extent can they experience gratitude if they have so much difficulty experiencing a broad range of emotions?
Short answer is I don't know.
Well,
It's
and that's true of so much of our field. We have many more questions than answers.
I would like to see a study on using Ron, your measure of normative male alexithymia, and correlate that with gratitude uh, outcomes and measures and see what we find.
Yeah,
Uh,
let's do it, Joel.
yeah, I've got, yeah,
I
so,
actually I have a bunch of grant money for u.gov samples.
well, do you still have energy for research on gratitude and masculinity, Ron? That's, I would say, let's do it. But let me just throw out a few things to think about, and this is in the realm of speculation, right? I'm not talking about empirical data here. Um, so, working with people who are experiencing, have difficulty with emotional expression and difficulty with emotions in general, maybe we should not think so much about how do we get them to feel more grateful and what activities can we have to have them experience gratitude. No, let's just change the focus. Think about how to express gratitude to them. That's a different focus. So think back of the example of my colleague, right? His father, who's probably someone who was like rough and gruff and no emotions, probably scored very high on alexithymia. The focus is on expressing gratitude to them. And I found one construct that really spoke to me a lot. Uh, and I view that as a fundamental human need. It's a positive side construct that's not very well known, but I really come to grapple with that and I kind of make that a mission in my life. And that's mattering. I believe that matter is a fundamental human need that we have, that we want to matter and we want to feel like we matter to other people, right? And there's a psychologist, Isaac Pilatensky, who broke down mattering into two dimensions. I'm going to get to the relevance to men very soon. Just bear with me here.
Mhm.
So he says mattering has two dimensions, and I like the way he framed it. That we want to feel valued by other people, and we want to add value to other people. We want to feel like we're able to add value to others, and we want to feel valued. So feeling value, the two are related, but they're slightly different. Feeling value is like, I want to know that people care for me. I want to know that I belong, right? The adding value is I want to know that I'm able to make a contribution to others, that I did something that made a difference. Okay. My suspicion, this is no data here, is that that second element of adding value is something that a lot of men really crave for, and they can identify, they can understand it immediately. The feeling value that sometimes that feels fuzzy, that feels very feminine to some of them. But this like, yeah, I want to be able to add value. I want to feel like I did something and I made a difference, right? So how does this relates back to gratitude and masculinity? Um, Being able to tell someone that you added value to me. Tell someone who has struggled with, who struggles with alexithymia, but just say, you added value to my life. You made a difference to me. Because of you, you influenced and shaped the way I think. You made a difference in our organization. You made a difference among our friends. I think that can be a very powerful way of having them experience what it's like to receive gratitude. So,
Yeah. And knowing what to, being able to sit in that without deflecting it, I think is also an acquired skill that a lot
yeah.
of folks don't have. Saeed's kind of hinting at this too. We had a couple of other hands up. I definitely want to come to you next. So Eddie, we're going to come to you next, and then we'll come to Vic.
Thank you so much, Brian, for having this conversation and for having Joel. I think this is very beneficial to think about. And on the topic, I have a comment, a thought, and then I have a possible another thought to the conversation that Ron posed to Joel around on expressive men. So for you, Joel, your research and what you've been talking about had me think about gratitude as less of a primary emotion and more of a higher order emotion, but also more of an appraisal for emotions. And so it's dealing with the empathetic process of relationship building versus the empathetic experience that we sometimes have in therapy. And gratitude becomes powerful when we use it as an appraisal of the emotions we're having that is based from lived experiences of some kind and coming from a sense of belonging. And so I think that that is what makes gratitude so great. And it's different forms of it. We have affirmations, right? We have mindfulness practices. We even have reflexivity, right? And we also have things such as love languages that we talk about, that missing component that couples often talk about. And so I like to think about gratitude in this appraisal of emotions that gives it this higher order understanding. And so when Ron came in and posed that question around unexpressive men, it made me think about the differences between alexithymia and anhedonia. So I believe unexpressive men can still feel the pleasure of gratitude, but not be able to sometimes put it in words because of other type of external conditions, whether that is upbringing or a traditional masculinity or gender norms or whatever the situational factors would be, but it wouldn't necessarily omit the experience of gratitude from them. There may just be need some more time to kind of think through how to give it some verbiage. And so those are the things that came to mind, and I so appreciate the conversation.
Can I just respond to Eddie on that very quickly? We did a study as to what the dynamics behind alexithymia were, looking at suppression, repression, and dissociation. And then a sample of college students found that it was overwhelmingly suppression, suggesting, again, in accord with what you said, is that these men could feel the emotion, but they suppress the expression of it.
Yeah, those are very good points, Eddie and Ron. Thank you very much. Yeah, I just want to make a brief comment that I think Eddie is really right that gratitude does involve kind of an appraisal process. Some researchers have called this a cognitively mediated emotion. In that gratitude is actually an emotion that very young, like toddlers, can experience because toddlers can experience happiness. Yeah, I'm happy. But to be able to go one step farther to say I'm experiencing gratitude does require a bit of thinking process, a kind of a cognitive process to be able to say, not only am I happy, but where is the source of this thing that I got? And so it does require a bit of thinking process. That is, I think, really critical. It's possible that some men can sort of vaguely experience that, but can't put words to it. And I think that's where, in therapy, you can really help them label the emotions and help them investigate a little bit of like, where do you think this source of this thing that you got came from? Right? You help them figure it out cognitively a little bit.
Nick, go ahead.
Thank you, Brian, for bringing us these interviews. It's been wonderful, and Joel, of course, great to see you again. I wonder if you can comment on this. All the things that you've been saying about gratitude, but I'm thinking about a patient I have that struggles with trying to find meaning in himself by having to create gratitude or seek gratitude in others. That his own meaning is so dependent on having to do things for other people, and he's not spontaneous in just feeling his gratitude and expressing that. He's always looking for who he can help so that he can feel good about himself. And I'm wondering if you could have some distinction in that.
Yeah,
Joel.
I think that's a good point, Vic. There are many clients who often seek validation in doing things for others. And maybe one hypothesis is that either others are not appreciating what this person is doing, right? Or he's not noticing the appreciation. Um, I mean, if the challenge, of course, with individual therapy is you can only work with one person, but we know that systems, right, play a role. So if this were family therapy or group therapy or couples therapy, this is where I would facilitate expressions of gratitude. By the way, when I do group therapy, one of the best things you can do in group therapy, reserve the last 5 minutes of any group session to say, I want you all to take some time to express gratitude to each other for something that you learned from them today. I think that's a great practice that that you all can try. So that's one thing that I'm thinking of that, of course, in individual therapy could be more limited. But two other thoughts came to my mind in the context of individual therapy. Number one, I've been an advocate of the therapist expressing gratitude to your clients. So maybe others can't, maybe they're not experiencing gratitude, but you could express gratitude to the client. This puts you in a vulnerable position because you're saying to the client that, not only am I giving you something in therapy, but there's something about our work together that's a gift to me too. And sort of letting the client know that in some way you've added value to my life. I've done that occasionally, and I found that it's been very powerful for clients to know that, wow, even my therapist is somehow moved by what I, change or moved by what I am doing here. So that's one thing. Then I'm going to the second thing is a more deeper question of, seeking validation in sort of people's approval is not kind of in the long term, a very healthy way. So I'm thinking of there might be, are there ways that we can help this person diversify their experiences, are ways that they can experience appreciation and gratitude in other areas of life, right? So I rather than just looking for people to be like appreciating me, can I look into people? Can I look into other things in my life for which I'm grateful for, or relationships for which I'm grateful for? So kind of diversify. And so, my list of 130 gratitude prompts there, it's includes many domains of life. And I like to encourage people to one of the exercises I have with people is pick a domain that you've never thought about. You've just never ever considered this area of your life. Pick it and consider how you might be able to experience gratitude in kind of novel ways.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we are at the top of the hour, so we're going to end here. Thank you all so much. And thank you so much to Joel for being here to share this knowledge on gratitude. So
Thank you, Joel.
we really
Thank you,
appreciate it. This was
I'm grateful.
Thank you all. Really appreciate
Thanks,
you all
Joel.
for being here.
And Brian.
Bye.
Have a great weekend, everybody.